In this video, I will tell you in detail how to care for geraniums at home so that it blooms beautifully and does not stretch out. Also tell you about the rules of pruning in spring and fall, about the regime of watering, transplanting, feeding, and propagation of geraniums. Pelargonium not only decorates your home, but also helps to purify the air, repel insects in summer, and protect other indoor plants from pests. Its long and long-lasting blooms make it a perfect addition to the interior of your home. For example, the flowers of the common zonal geranium delight with their beautiful appearance for 20 to 30 days, blooming continuously from late February to September with proper care. Place, lighting, and other conditions for geraniums at home. Geraniums love bright light, and the more sunlight they receive, the more abundant they bloom. However, it can also tolerate moderate light. The ideal temperature for geraniums is standard room temperature, about 18 to 21 degrees during the day and 13 degrees at night. In winter, you can move the geranium to a cooler place with an average temperature of 10 to 15 degrees. The place where the geranium is located should be well ventilated, but avoid harsh drafts and cold. If geraniums do not get enough light, they can look pale, their leaves become smaller, and the plant starts to elongate. If your region is often cloudy in winter, you can compensate for the lack of sunlight by installing a phytolamp about 10 centimeters above the top of the plant. Watering. Water for watering geraniums should be either filtered or tempered, and necessarily at room temperature or slightly warm. Cold water can lead to root rot. How often to water geraniums? In summer and spring, geraniums should be watered as the top layer of soil dries out, about once every 2 to 3 days. In winter and fall, watering frequency should be reduced to once every 10 to 14 days. It is worth remembering that geraniums originating from South Africa are drought-tolerant and can store moisture. It tolerates underwatering better than overwatering. Therefore, spraying or washing the leaves of geraniums is not recommended, as this can cause them to yellow. However, yellowing leaves can also be caused by a lack of moisture. It is important to make sure that no standing water remains in the pot tray after watering. Also make sure that there are large enough drainage holes in the bottom of the pot. Pruning and pinching geraniums. Pruning is one of the key procedures in caring for potted geraniums at home. If it is neglected, the plant will strive upward, become disproportionate, sparingly blooming, and flowering will become less abundant. Crown formation should be started early, when pelargonium is still young and its stems have not had time to elongate. There are dormant buds on each node of the main trunk, which rarely by themselves will give lateral shoots. To stimulate them requires pruning the elongated shoots. Pruning geraniums is not a difficult procedure, especially since it is only done 1 to 2 times a year. The cut stems can be thrown away or used for propagation. We will talk about this below. In addition, pruning helps to improve ventilation in the crown, prolong flowering, and generally strengthen the plant. Naturally, the shape of geraniums can vary depending on the varieties. Some varieties of pelargoniums are more compact, and others are taller. Such features should be taken into account when shaping the pruning. So, how to properly prune geraniums? First of all, it is necessary to choose the optimal time when the plant can survive this process without serious consequences. Pruning geraniums in spring from the end of February to March is the main and most important. The main purposes of this pruning are crown formation, awakening of dormant buds, and stimulation of the growth of side shoots. Pruning geraniums in autumn is aimed at improving the general condition of the plant, relieving the stress of the dormant period, which lasts from December to mid-February, and preparing it for the next flowering season. Crown shaping pruning is not usually done in the fall. It is important to remember that pruning should only be done on plants that have finished flowering. Let's move on to the practical implementation of this procedure. How to prune geraniums in spring. Step 1. Prepare the necessary tools and accessories. Disinfect a sharp garden knife by wiping it with alcohol or piercing it. Note that it is not recommended to use scissors, as they can damage the plant. You will also need activated charcoal powder to treat the cuts. Step 2. Determine the degree of geranium pruning required and proceed to trimming the main trunk. This depends on the particular variety of plant. Miniature pelargoniums are not pruned every year and are pruned moderately, cutting back only the elongated stems by only a few centimeters. Medium-height geraniums should be shortened by a third. High geranium varieties are cut back to 2/3 of their height and thin out quite heavily, leaving only 4 to 5 of the strongest shoots. The cut is made above the leaf node, pointing outwards from the crown of the plant, at a right angle. Step 3. Remove any stems pointing inwards from the crown, either by hand, simply breaking off unwanted stems, or with scissors. Step 4. Get rid of all flowering inflorescences and yellowing leaves. After pruning, the center part of the crown should be left open to allow air to circulate freely around it. Step 5. Make stem cuts as you see fit, shaping the crown if necessary. Step 6. Sprinkle charcoal over the cut points. You can use ground cinnamon as an alternative to charcoal. Step 7. Feed with a nitrogen fertilizer. This is not necessary, but it can accelerate the growth of geraniums after pruning only in spring. The main thing is not to overdo it. Otherwise, the growth of the plant will be directed into the formation of foliage. Important points. Pruning geraniums should be carried out with disinfected tools, alcohol, or boiling water. For 2 days before and after pruning, geraniums should not be watered. In summer, you can clean the crown of the geranium a little by removing dried leaves or stems. Now let's look at fall pruning of geraniums. It is not always necessary and not for all geranium varieties. For example, royal geraniums require pruning both in the fall and spring. In this case, the fall pruning can be quite radical, to the level of the stump. However, the royal geranium quickly replenishes its crown with new shoots and peduncles. Ample and zonal varieties of geraniums can be cut only in the spring, if the plant does not require a significant correction of the form. Miniature pelargoniums are not cut every year, and moderately only the elongated stems are shortened by 1 to 2 centimeters. The variegated varieties of geraniums are not recommended to be cut back at all. Step 1. When flowering is over, remove the flower stalks that have bloomed, as well as wilted and shriveled leaves. Step 2. Then cut off about a third of any elongated, weakened, and leafless stems. Don't worry if the plant seems a little modest after trimming, because by spring its crown will be more beautiful and voluminous again. In addition to pruning, about 2 to 3 times during the entire growing season from late February through September, geraniums need pinching. What does this mean? Pinching is the removal of the growing point in young shoots when they grow too large, when there are more than 5 to 6 leaves on the stem. Pinching also stimulates the formation of lateral shoots, resulting in a lush plant. Soon after pinching, new shoots begin to form in the leaf axils and bloom in about 2 to 2.5 months. In the GEV below you can see how to pinch geraniums by hand. It can also be done with scissors. Geranium propagation. The tops of geraniums left over after pruning can be used for propagation. The best cuttings take root in spring, but you can also get good results in the fall. Propagating geraniums by cuttings is the easiest and quickest way to add to your collection of flowers. Already in the first summer after rooting, the young plants will begin to bloom and retain all the properties of the mother plant. So, how to propagate geraniums and root cuttings? After cutting geraniums, select from the cuttings young shoots, the stems of which have not yet had time to fossilize. If the cuttings are too long, it can be divided into 2 to 3 shoots with a length of about 10 to 15 centimeters. Now it is necessary to root these shoots in water or in the soil. The second method is more reliable. Here are step-by-step instructions on how to root pelargonium cuttings with a probability of success of about 99%. Rooting geranium cuttings by planting them in the ground. Cut the cuttings below the bud, then break off or cut off the bottom 2 or 3 leaves. Let the cuttings rest for 5 minutes to allow their base to dry out a little. In the prepared pot with drainage holes, put a layer of drainage 1.5 to 2 centimeters thick. Then pour the soil into the pot about 2/3. To do this, you can use a universal soil for flowering indoor plants or prepare a mixture yourself from sod earth 50%, sand 30%, and peat 20%. In the center of the soil with a pencil make a hole, plant the cuttings in it to a depth of 5 centimeters and compact the soil around it. Put a plastic bag on the pot and leave it for 3 weeks in a place with sufficient light. The first feeding with fertilizer can be done no earlier than 3 months after planting the cuttings. Rooting geranium cuttings in water is easier, but less effective. Here are the step-by-step instructions. Take a small container and pour about 100 milliliters of tempered or filtered water into it. Lower the base of the cuttings into the water to a depth of no more than 1.5 to 2 centimeters. Deep immersion can lead to rotting. Add a couple of activated charcoal tablets to the glass. Place the glass with the cuttings in a place with sufficient light, but avoid direct sunlight. Change the water once a week. If it evaporates quickly, add water to the glass as needed. After about 10 days, you will see the first roots. After 45 to 50 days, but not later, when the roots reach a length of about 2.5 to 3 centimeters, transplant the cuttings into a pot with soil according to the instructions for transplanting geraniums, which you will find in the video tutorial. Repotting is always stressful for geraniums. It is only necessary if the roots have overgrown or if the plant needs to be saved from overwatering. Transplanting pelargoniums immediately after purchase is especially risky, as they need at least a month to adapt. In any case, geraniums should only be transplanted in spring and summer. In winter, a transplanted plant may not take root in the new soil. How to transplant geraniums? First of all, make sure that the geranium flower stalks have not yet begun to bloom. If they have already started, it is better to postpone transplanting until after flowering or simply break off the pedicels. Then follow these step-by-step instructions. Choose a new pot slightly larger than the previous one. Prepare the soil for transplanting geraniums. It should be loose, well-drained, and neutral in acidity. A universal substrate for flowering indoor plants will do. At the bottom of the new pot, pour a layer of drainage 1.5 to 2 centimeters thick. Lower the geranium into the new pot with the old pot or without it, if the roots are flooded so that the trunk was covered with soil, and on the surface remained only the center of the bush. Gradually add soil around the roots, holding the plant in place. After the first 2 handfuls of soil, you can add a long-lasting all-purpose fertilizer, such as Osmocote, according to the recommendations on the package. Feeding geraniums. Geranium is a plant that needs regular feeding with mineral fertilizers. Here are the basic rules for feeding geraniums. Beginning in March and continuing through mid-September. Conduct geranium fertilization. Feed pelargonium once every 2 weeks. Before fertilizing, be sure to moisten the soil. What fertilizers are suitable for geraniums? Any complex fertilizers for flowering plants are suitable. Usually they contain phosphorus, potassium, copper, boron, manganese, calcium, iron, and nitrogen. It is important that the nitrogen in the composition was a little, otherwise the geranium will begin to actively grow into the leaves, and flowering can be delayed. Feed the plant with a mineral complex according to the manufacturer's instructions. Here are a few more options for fertilizing. Nitrogen fertilizers. They are good for stimulating the growth of new shoots after pruning the plant. Iodine. This is an effective stimulant during flowering once every 10 days, as well as a means for the prevention of fungal diseases. Iodine is diluted in water to drops per 1 liter of water. 1 medium pot will need about 50 milliliters of solution. Fertilizer should be poured over the walls of the pot, avoiding getting on the roots and stem. Magnesium sulfate. Fertilization is carried out once a month to stimulate flowering. The solution is diluted 5 grams of magnesium per 1.5 liters of warm water. 1 medium pot requires 50 milliliters of solution. Charcoal. Excellent, replaces mineral complexes since it contains phosphorus and potassium. The solution is prepared 1 tablespoon of ash per 1 liter of water. The recommended dose is 100 milliliters per 1 pot.